I remember my crush ends up walking up to the door to open the cabin, but for some reason, the cabin door wouldn't open. We ended up looking at each other and she looks at me and says, Bubba, I think we're stuck in here. Wait, what? Why? And that's when I walked up to the door as well and I saw that the door would not budge. I started to worry because there was no way I was stuck in a cabin with my crush. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another insane story. Now, this story all takes place back in my grade 11 year. Now, in grade 11, I was a pretty simple guy, but at the same time, I was a major player, meaning that I would do simple things like play video games, go for long drives since I just got my license that year, and as well as, I guess, do homework. Not really, to be honest. I never really cared about school growing up, which probably led me to becoming a creator online that tells weird stories like this, but going on with the story, I remember basically, I was walking through the hallway in my grade 11 year and I ended up seeing one of my friends. Now, this friend that I had back in my grade 11 year, he was really rich, like rich to the point where it's actually kind of disgusting. I remember when I first got my license, I ended up getting my first car, which was a Toyota Celica GT, and I love that car to death. Like, I have no hate towards the car. I love it. As a first car, it did what it was supposed to do. But as for my friend, he ended up getting like $100,000 car. I think it was like a Hellcat is what he called it, and it was the most insane vehicle ever. Literally every girl in school would know when he pulled up because his car was so loud that even the teachers complained to the parents of my friend. But at the same time, he didn't care, nor did his parents. Going on with the story, I remember I ended up walking up to him and he looked at me and said, "Yo, Bubba, you know spring break's coming up, right?" Yeah. What about it? Well, like, do you have any plans? No, not that I know of. Why? Okay, bro, listen, right? Me and my parents, we bought a cabin recently, and it's actually not that far from here. It's deep in the woods up the hills, but it's really nice, and no joke, I was thinking me, you, and we bring a couple of baddies with us and we go up to the cabin. You down? I remember I looked at him and I'm like, bro, what girls would want to go with us up to a cabin? What do you mean what girls, bro? It's that easy. Just say what girls you want. At that moment, I ended up looking around and I ended up seeing my high school crush that I liked walking down the hallway. And me and her, we ended up having like a little eye contact. And that's when my friend looked at me and noticed that we were having eye contact. And he said, bro, I'll invite her if you want. What? No, don't invite her. It's not a good idea. What? Why not, bro? It's clear you like her. So like, if you're not going to talk to her, like you might as well just invite her out and maybe you can like, you know, meet her at the cabin. You know what I'm saying? Cabin lovin'. Do you know what you're even saying right now? Is what I told him. But he ended up shrugging his shoulders and ended up running up to my high school crush. At that moment, he ended up inviting her to like the cabin that's happening on spring break. And I ended up walking up behind him and she looked at me and said, "Oh, Bubba, are you going to this cabin thing he's talking about?" And I looked at my friend because I didn't even give him an answer yet. But I ended up noticing that she wanted to go as well. And I just ended up saying, yeah, I'm going. You're not going to come, or are you going as well? Oh, well, I mean, if you're going, sure, like I'll be there. At that moment, my friend just looks at me and smiles as if like, you know, he just accomplished a mission or something. But honestly, in my mind, I was just really awkwarded out, nor did I know what to say. But once we got her approval of her going to the cabin, she ended up walking away and my friend looks at me and I look at him as well and I say to him, "Yo, so if she's going, who are you gonna bring?" I don't know yet. I'm just gonna send a snap out to like 12 different girls and see which ones want to go." At that moment, he ended up sending like all like 12 different girls on his Snapchat a message. I guess it was like his roster back in high school because he was also a major player like me. And he ends up basically like messaging these girls and he just said, "I guess we'll just wait for the day when, you know, it happens." At that moment, I was like, okay, whatever. And let's just say when spring break finally came around, things got really wild because I remember leading up to spring break, he would always DM me a different girl that was coming down. And I was like really confused because it got to the point where like 5 different girls were like ready to go with him. And when it finally came to the night before, I ended up packing my stuff and crashing at his place with my car. When I went over to his place, I remember we ended up loading the vehicles up for the next day. And I looked at him and said, "Yo, so do you know what girls you're bringing?" "Yeah, to be honest, I'm just gonna bring 2 because like I don't know which one I like more, and since there's 3 rooms in the cabin, like one girl can sleep by herself if she wants, or like I'll just take turns with them. I don't really care." Okay, cool, I guess, is what I told him. And to be fair, it was his cabin, nor was I gonna say anything. But then afterwards he told me, "Oh, also Bubba, I'm gonna pick up the 2 girls I'm gonna bring, but can you go pick up the chick that you like?" "What? You want me to pick her up from her house?" "Yeah, she sent me her address. Here, I'll send it to you." He ended up sending me her address and I was really nervous because I didn't know if she was, to be honest, going to the cabin for me or for my really rich friend. But the next day when we got up, we ended up getting ready and we ended up basically driving to go pick up the girls. The 2 girls that he invited actually ended up coming over to his place since I guess they were both his sneaky links and I guess they met for the first time together at his house, which is really weird. But me, I ended up driving to go pick up this girl, and when I saw her already standing outside with a suitcase, and I drove up to her and said, "Hey, like, you ready for the cabin?" "Oh, hey Bubba, I didn't know you were picking me up." Yeah, is that okay?" "What? Yeah, of course it's okay. Here, let me put my things in the trunk." She ends up packing her things inside, and well, one thing led to another. She got in my car and we started heading over to the cabin. We started driving down, and every once in a while, my friend would call me to make sure I'm going the right way, because this cabin was like really high up in the woods. Like, since I'm Canadian, I guess like there's like a ton of mountains, and this like cabin was like up there. So I remember I ended up taking my car and driving it up the hills, and it was really cool because this girl was like, you know, enjoying the like weather and stuff, and she loves the forest apparently, which to be fair, the only time I use a forest is when I wanted to go do the Devil's Tango. I'm not really much of a hiker, to be honest, but I remember me and her, we finally ended up making it to the cabin, and when we got there, I ended up seeing the two girls unloading their stuff from my friend's car that he brought, and me and this girl, we ended up getting out of our car and we ended up unloading things as well. We got inside the cabin, we started picking our rooms, and this cabin was actually really nice. Like, in the daytime, it was beautiful. There was like nice furniture, you know, the wood walls, like it was fantastic. But I think the most awkward part about this though was that when it finally came to us like going inside the cabin with our suitcases, I remember my friend walks up in front of all of us and says, okay, so there's 3 bedrooms, I forgot to mention, so like I was wondering if you guys want to group up in some way. And it was so funny because the 2 girls he brought looked at each other and looked at him and said, oh, like, aren't I sharing a room with you? I mean, I don't mind, whichever way works. And they ended up all putting their luggage in the same room. As for me and this girl, I looked at her and I'm like, well, I mean, there's 2 rooms left. Do you want your own room? Like, it's totally up to you. And she looks around and says, yeah, I mean, I'll have my own room if you want me to. Oh, no, I mean, like, it's totally up to you. Like, we can share a room if you're down. Like, I would prefer that if you want me to be honest. And that's when she smiles. She ends up smiling and saying, you know what? Sure. That sounds like a plan. I remember me and her, we ended up putting our suitcases in the same room, and we had one spare room with absolutely nothing in it, except the bed and the closet. But still, it was totally empty and no one was staying in there. I guess we would call that like the anger room. If someone gets angry at each other, then, you know, they could just go into the spare room. But anyways, going on with the story. After all the rooms and everything was sorted out, we ended up all heading into the living room. We started playing games together. We started like, you know, plugging in the Wii because for some reason someone brought a Wii system thinking it was a good idea, which to be fair actually was, because we ended up playing Mario Party for like 4 hours. And as it started to get late at night, I remember my friend ends up going to his car and pulling out a ton of booze. Now, quick warning before anything, okay? I have to put this warning out there because I don't want to get this video demonetized, but basically the warning is do not underage drink. It is not cool. It does not make you a cooler person. It is bad for your system and no one should do it. High school is when you're supposed to experiment. I get that, but underage drinking is really gross and really disgusting. But since he brought booze, we all ended up having a good time and we ended up drinking together. And well, that led to some craziness because I remember after we all drank, we started to get really hungry. And for some reason, my friend thought it was a good idea to bring booze, but not bring food. So I remember one girl even tried to like Uber Eats food to the place, but we were a far away cabin. Like there was no way there were any restaurants nearby to bring us food. And then that's when one of the girls said, oh, well, to be honest, I didn't drink at all. And I mean, I could just drive one of your guys' cars and we can go like quickly to the store and pick up something. I remember my friend, he ends up like pulling out his keys out of his pocket and he ends up throwing it at the girl from how like much he drank. And he's like, I'll come with you since it's my car, but like, let's go like together. What? Dude, we're not all gonna fit in your car, is what I told him. And that's when he's like, oh, I see what you mean. Okay, you 2 lovebirds stay here, and me and these 2 baddies right here, we're gonna go. I remember one of the girls got super upset when he said that, to the point where they actually all ended up leaving together, but the last girl, for some reason, that left the door, ended up slamming it super hard to close it. At that moment, I remember my crush looks at me, and she's like, okay, well, he's a bit of a jerk. What, him? How is he a jerk? Well, like, I don't know, that's a bit overkill, don't you think? I mean, yeah, but like, you gotta understand, he's been like, you know, drinking and like, you know, it's just one of those nights. Oh, okay, well, you seem calm. Yeah, like, I'm good. Do you go out to cabins much? To be honest, it's my first time, I guess you could say, other than like camp. Oh, well, do you want to like maybe like walk around, like go check out like what's around here? You mean you want to go walk into the woods? Yeah, like, why not? Okay. I remember me and this girl, we ended up basically walking up to the front door and we tried opening it. But then I remember my crush, she ends up pulling the handle down, but realizing that the handle would not move. And that's when my crush looks at me and says, Baba, the store isn't moving. What? What do you mean? And that's when I walked up to the handle as well, and I realized that the door would not open. And this was like the main entrance. There was no other doors around the cabin other than this main entrance door. And all the windows were like alarm systemed, and we didn't want to like mess with anything. So I remember I ended up looking at this girl and I'm like, I think we're stuck in here. Wait, what? How are we stuck? That makes no sense. I remember she starts kind of panicking and I start to as well, because, well, to be fair, like, we're stuck in a cabin. And one thing led to another. together, I remember she looks at me and she starts to worry because we ended up getting an Amber Alert on our phones right at that moment. It started to freak us out, and obviously, like, you know, it made me a little shook that, you know, it started to rain, we got an Amber Alert, and then, like, on top of that, we were stuck in a cabin. We thought things could not get worse, but sadly, it did, because I remember me and this girl, we ended up just going up to my room, or I guess our room, I should say, and we ended up sitting on the bed, and we're starting to think, like, what should we do? Should we call my friend? But there's no service. And then that's when the worst thing happened, where I remember all of a sudden, we ended up hearing, like, a large, like, thunderstruck, and then the lights went out. It just went dark. For some reason, like, there was no lights at all that would turn on. And that's when I looked at her and said, I think the power went out. Wait, what? Are you serious? Oh my goodness, things just can't get worse. I hate thunderstorms. Oh, well, don't worry, I'm sure it'll pass. Bubba, can you come cuddle me? Yeah, sure. I remember me and her, we ended up cuddling in the bed that we were supposed to sleep in. And well, from cuddling, it led to one thing and another. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, guys. We ended up doing the devil's tango in a cabin that we were stuck in with the power out. I mean, to be fair, like, it seemed like the perfect moment to me. I don't really know, to be honest. Comment down below what you guys think. But honestly, things did end up still getting worse. And you guys are probably wondering how. Well, let's just say like an hour went by. And I remember we ended up hearing someone downstairs open the front door. But honestly, me and her were so distracted with each other that we didn't realize one of the girls ended up walking into our room when we're in the middle of doing the devil's tango. And she walks in there complaining, saying, OMG, like, I'm so done with him. Like, he's such a jerk. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see what was going on here. And she ends up leaving right away. At that moment, me and this girl that was my crush looked at each other and we kind of just giggled and laughed. Honestly, we thought things were just as bad as they seem, and what's the point of complaining? I remember she ended up entering the boys' cabin, and out of nowhere, she ended up looking at all of us saying, what, you never seen a girl in here before? Well, how about this? And she ends up showing her cherries to the entire cabin full of guys just to get my attention. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to a super embarrassing but crazy story. Now, today's story all takes place back in my grade 7 year. Now, in grade 7, I was in middle school, and honestly, I was just a basic kid. I never paid attention to anyone. I only did my own thing. And if I'm gonna be honest, the only thing I actually really did care about was playing video games, because that's the only thing I enjoyed. For all those people back then that played Call of Duty Black Ops 2, you guys know what I'm talking about. But going on with the story, I remember it was the summer of my grade 7 year, and basically I was going into grade 8 and I was super excited, but for some reason my parents in my grade 7 year decided to make me learn an instrument. I don't know what it is with parents trying to see talent come out of their children, but I'll tell you one thing, I wasn't really that talented. So me and my parents, knowing this, they ended up deciding to make me take an instrument and basically learn an instrument that I could be talented at. And out of all the instruments that are out there, they ended up making me choose the worst one, and that was the clarinet. Now, honestly, I hate the clarinet. Like, for all those SpongeBob fans out there, okay, my nose is already big enough. I did not need to become Squidward and play the clarinet. But I remember one day coming home from clarinet practice, my parents ended up always asking me, oh, Bubba, did you learn anything? Bubba, did you learn how to play a song? And I kept telling them no, because I'm gonna be honest, I was terrible at playing the clarinet. No matter how many lessons I got, for some reason, I could just not learn it. So I remember one day when I came home from hanging out with my friends, my parents were sitting in the living room, and I went and said hi to them, and they said to me, Bubba, can you sit down with us for a second? I sat down with them, and that's when my mom ended up telling me, Bubba, we're going to be sending you to band camp. Band camp? What is this, a Nickelodeon TV show? Why am I going to band camp? Bubba, don't worry, it'll be fun, and you'll learn how to play an instrument with all the other kids. At that moment, I got so annoyed, because not only did I not know how to play the clarinet or play any instrument at that matter, they ended up basically making me go to a camp where it's full of nerds that knew how to play instruments. At that moment, I was super annoyed, but I remember as the next couple of weeks went on, my parents ended up sending me to band camp. And no joke, when the bus came to pick me up, I was regretting walking on there so much. I remember when I got on the bus, I ended up seeing a lot of kids that actually went to my high school, and all of them were, well, nobodies. But then there was one person in the back of the bus that I recognized that actually went to my elementary school. So I went and sat beside him, and we caught up on a bunch of things. Like, for example, he told me about how he started to play guitar, how he still plays video games, and how a lot of the kids in band camp are actually pretty cool. At first, I did not believe him whatsoever, but when we finally arrived at camp, in the middle of nowhere, by the way, we ended up getting our things, and we ended up heading to our cabins that we would stay in. Now, in band camp, there's two separate cabins that you would stay at. There was the girls' cabin, and there was the guys' cabin. So I guess you guys wouldn't understand where I went, and that was the guys' cabin. And no, by the way, there is no she, he, they, them cabin, okay? It was just guys and girls, okay? It's like buying an Amazon t-shirt. Like, there's only 2 sections at the time. But going on, I remember I ended up getting inside the guys' cabin, and all the guys were unpacking their instruments, unpacking all their clothes, and me, I was doing the same thing. And then right as we heard the bell for all of us to meet up at the front of the campsite. So when we all ran out there, I remember there was a lot of us. Like, there was over 40 people attending this band camp. And as we were all like basically lining up in a giant group, I started to notice there was one girl from the girls' cabin that kept staring at me. For some reason, there was this girl that was like a total nerd, and she just kept looking at me weird. And honestly, it made me super uncomfortable, to the point where I looked at my friend and said, yo, who's the girl that keeps staring me down as if she wants to kill me? Oh, bro, that's actually a girl that got kicked out of the middle school. I don't know what she did, but apparently she's like really good at the drums, but she's kind of crazy. Huh, okay. Why is she staring at me though? Oh no, she's probably interested in you or something. My opinion, stay away from her. I remember I got super weirded out, and I decided to do exactly what my friend told me and to stay away. A couple days went on, and I remember there would be really weird random moments throughout the day where I would be sitting with my friends or hanging out with the guys, and the girl would always still just stare at me randomly. It made me super uncomfortable, and there was this one specific moment where I remember it was lunchtime and we were all eating our food at our table groups, and no joke, she stood up as she was staring at me and decided to walk up to me. But as she was walking up to me, I remember our team captain, or basically the adult that was watching over everyone at band camp, ended up walking up to us and asked me, so Bubba, did you learn a lot about the clarinet? And I just looked at her super awkwardly, because I'm not gonna lie, even me being at band camp, I still did not know anything about the clarinet. But after that whole situation, it made her, the creepy girl that would always stare at me, walk away. Now, there were many moments where things happened like that, and there was this one specific moment that almost freaked me out, because I remember there was a day in band camp where we all decided to go to the lake. It was basically a rest day from playing the instruments all week. We ended up all going to the lake, and we all started playing games like volleyball and tennis and flew a kite. Like, we did a bunch of different activities. And as I was playing volleyball with me and my friends, I remember this girl kept staring me down, and she actually ended up walking up to me. She walked up to me and said, hey, so like, you're that guy that plays the clarinet, right? Yeah, hi, my name's Bubba. Hi, well, I just want to say, like, I think you're like really cool. Thanks. Yeah. As we were having that super weird conversation, no joke, my buddy ends up running up to me and he says, yo, Bubba, you gonna pass the ball or what, bro? Why are you talking to this girl? Come on, let's get out of here. Girls have cooties. And me and my buddy, we ended up going back and playing volleyball. Now, that was the only interaction I thought I was gonna have with her. But let's just say later that night, things got really creepy, because I remember at night, we ended up all heading to our cabins and we basically got ready for bed. I ended up getting all my things put together, and then that's when it happened. I ended up hearing rocks hitting my window that was right beside my bed, and I didn't know what was going on. And then after a while, lights ended up going out and all the guys were laying down getting ready to sleep. Me, I was laying down as well, but once again, I heard more rocks hitting my window. I ended up opening the window and I ended up looking around to see what was going on, until out of the bushes came this girl that was talking to me earlier. She looks at me and says, hey, like, we didn't finish our conversation. What are you doing here? What? It's late. Yeah, I know. Here, let me in. And I remember she ends up crawling through the window and she looks at me saying, Bubba, like, I was just wondering, can I get your number? What? I don't have my phone on me. I didn't bring it with me to camp. And that's when it happened. I remember one of the boys ended up waking up that was near the light switch. He ended up turning on the lights and saying, yo, what? Why is there a girl in here? Guys, there's a girl inside the cabin. I remember everyone started to wake up and just start staring at this girl as if they'd never seen a woman before in their life, which, I mean, to be fair, they might have never at that point, but still, they were like in total shock. And I look at this girl and I'm like, yo, I think you should get out of here. And then this girl ends up doing the most craziest thing ever, when she looks over at everyone and says, what, you guys have never seen a girl before? I bet you guys have never seen these before. And she ends up whipping out her cherries in the middle of the cabin while all the guys were staring. No joke, all the guys started to freak out as if like it was their first pair of cherries they've ever seen. Well, actually, it definitely was, but still, like, it was so awkward and super weird. And I remember I looked at the girl and said, yo, like, what are you doing? I ended up giving her my t-shirt and I put it on her and I ended up walking her outside my cabin. When we went out the front door, she ended up looking at me saying, so I was just wondering, can I still get your number? And that's when I told her she was absolutely crazy and to please not ever talk to me again. You guys probably thought me and her did the devil's tango, but I am not gonna do it with a girl that literally showed her cherries to the entire cabin full of guys. Like, that's like doing a girl that did the whole entire football team. As me and this girl were literally inside the cabin, out of nowhere, we ended up seeing one of the sisters walk into the cabin, and she saw me and her doing the devil's tango. And at that moment, I knew I got caught at church camp. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to a super crazy but embarrassing story. Now, this story starts off back in my grade 10 summer year. So basically, the summer of me going from grade 10 to grade 11. And around this time, I'm not gonna lie, my grade 10 year was just full of me playing video games and basically doing the devil's tango with a lot of different girls. And since I was so distracted with all the women in my life, I remember that basically ended up leading me to not be the smartest at school. So I remember after the summer after my parents ended up seeing the grades that I got for that school year, they were pretty upset. They were upset to the point where they didn't know what to do with me. They didn't want me to, you know, have a good summer, I guess, and they were thinking about taking me to summer school. But I remember one of my family friends ended up coming over one day, and when he came over, he was some old guy that was really wise and someone that my parents looked up to. And basically one time as we were all sitting for family dinner, I remember this old guy ended up saying, "Bubba, you're a Christian, aren't you?" Yes, sir, I am. I know a lovely summer activity that is happening, and you should go. Right as he said summer activity, my mom was about to shut it down and be like, no, he needs to stay home, and he's basically going to end up going to summer school. But before she could say that, this old man said, yeah, you know, there is a church camp going on, and I think you would do great in there. Meet some lovely people. Right as he said church camp, I'm not going to lie to you, I looked over at him and my parents and thought, bro, what? Me going to church camp is like the devil walking into the church. Like, I don't know if that's a good idea. Like, for God's sakes, I literally say the word devil's tango on this channel. But basically, he ended up telling me that, and I just said right after, looking at my parents, I don't know about that, to be honest. That's up to my parents, and I think my parents have plans for me this summer. But then my dad interrupts saying, oh, actually, Bubba, I think it would be good for you to go to church camp. What? Dad, you're joking, right? No, I think you should go to church camp. It'll be good for you, my son. You'll learn the ways of the Bible and become a good man. Now, I'm gonna say one thing. My family is Christian. I grew up in a Christian household. So, you know, I was not foreign to the Bible. Like, I've been to church every Sunday and I knew what I was doing when it came to saying Bible verses. But going to an entire camp for an entire week, like, we already have to sacrifice Sundays. Why do I need to go for an entire week to a camp? I remember I was super against it, and I was basically trying to convince my parents not to let me go. But, well, for some reason, old people have just the greatest ideas in the planet, which I'm totally lying about. They don't. There's a reason why they're old. And I ended up staying silent the rest of the dinner time just so no crazy ideas would come up even more. I remember after dinner ended, this old guy ended up going home, and basically I went upstairs to my room to play some Call of Duty because I wanted to enjoy somewhat of my summer I had left. And that's when my mom ended up walking into my room. She walked into my room and said, Bubba, can you pause the game? I need to talk to you for a second. Mom, I can't pause an online game. Okay, well then turn off the Xbox. I need to talk to you right now. I remember I turned off the Xbox and I ended up sitting down on my bed with my mom, and my mom handed me the flyer that this old guy was talking about with the church camp on it. I remember I ended up looking through the flyer and it looked pretty boring. Don't get me wrong, the activities were cool, like rock climbing, swimming, lake jumping, you know, pretty cool activities. But I'm not gonna lie, like, I just didn't feel like it would be a place for me to go to. But that's when my mom told me, Bubba, me and your father really want you to go to this church camp. So pack your bags, you're going to be leaving next weekend. I remember I was so upset at that moment. I remember I was furious because I feel like my parents were doing this to punish me, but at the same time, like, bro, what am I gonna do at church camp? Anyways, from there, I remember that entire week was just me being super upset. I was so mad. I was so furious. And when it finally came to the day of me leaving for church camp, my parents ended up dropping me off at a church, and we all got on a bus and started heading to, well, the middle of absolute nowhere. I remember as I was sitting on the bus though, heading there, I ended up actually knowing some people that were from my church, and they were very surprised to see me on that bus because some people at church were like my age and they knew my reputation back in high school. So yeah, like I said, they were basically looking at me as if I was the devil. But I remember I ended up just basically keeping to myself and talking to some of them once here and there. And then afterwards, when we finally got to the church camp, 3 other buses ended up pulling up from other areas. Some people even came and flew in from like LA to come to this church camp. I didn't know how big of a deal this place was, but apparently it was a pretty big deal. So I remember as everyone was coming off the bus, we all ended up getting into our groups and we ended up going into our cabins. And this is where things got pretty cool because I got put in the guys' cabin, and me and all the guys, we ended up basically like all like introducing ourselves. And I started to realize a lot of people in there were kind of just like me. Like, we were all young, cool, and honestly, we all loved video games and like superheroes. So, I mean, I had some stuff in common with them. So I remember we ended up going to all the activities that church camp had. And honestly, I could get more into it, but honestly, let's get to the juicy part of this story. Because I remember lunchtime came around, and this was the first lunchtime. And basically, I ended up getting my meal, and we all sat down as if we were in the cafeteria of a high school. And as we were sitting there about to eat, I remember someone comes up to the front of the stage and says, "Okay, guys, we're gonna be praying for our food, so everyone bow your heads." I remember everyone started bowing their head, and me, I started kind of like looking around because I'm not gonna lie, like, I have this thing where if everyone around me is praying, like, I kind of just like to look around and see what other people's reactions are. And I'm gonna say this, I was the only one to do this. But I remember as everyone was bowing their heads, I ended up looking at a girl that was staring directly at me. She was looking at me and staring at me as if I was like a bad guy, but at the same time, she was like attracted to the bad guy. Like, I have really no idea, but she was just staring me down like nonstop. I didn't know what was going on, and I was so confused. But then I ended up bowing my head just for her to basically stop looking at me. I kind of got uncomfortable, but this girl was definitely super attractive. After everyone prayed, I remember everyone started eating, and I started eating my food and basically, you know, enjoying my meal. But right after I finished, I ended up putting my plate away at the spot where you're supposed to, like, you know, put away all your dishes. And as I was putting my plate down, the girl that was staring at me earlier when we were all praying walks up to me. She walks up to me and says, "Hey, like, where are you from?" "Oh, I'm from just the city away. What about you?" "Oh, I'm just from LA. I just, like, you know, flew in because my parents wanted me to go to church camp." "Oh, funny you say that. My parents wanted me to go to church camp as well." Well, I mean, makes sense, obviously, because we're both here. I remember she started giggling and she said, "You're kind of funny." Thanks," is what I told her. And basically, me and her, we started to basically talk about life and stuff, and how basically, I'm not gonna lie, me and this girl were very alike. Because not only did we both play video games, which was a major shocker for girls to play games back then, but me and her, we also got along because we were both major players. No joke, we ended up spending the entire like lunchtime together, or what we had left at least, basically talking about us being players in high school. And it got to the point where me and her, we ended up basically challenging each other, saying, "Okay, listen, I think I'm definitely better at the Devil's Tango than you." "What? No, you're not, Bubba. You don't understand what I'm good at, okay? There's a reason why my parents sent me here." At that moment, me and her stared at each other, and we both realized that there was no way to properly settle this other than us actually doing the Devil's Tango. So this girl ends up saying, "Okay, well, like, let's do it. I'm sure there's somewhere to do it around here." "Wait, what? You want to do the Devil's Tango?" "Yeah, like, I'm sure we'll find a spot. Just go throughout the day and just tell me if you find something, and I'll message you. Here, what's your number?" I ended up getting her phone number, and the service there was really spotty, so there was like very slight chances of our messages going through, but it was better than nothing. After that, a couple days went by throughout church camp, and well, one thing led to another. I remember one night, I ended up getting a message at like 10 p.m. when it was supposed to be lights out. I ended up getting a text from the girl saying, "Hey, Bubba, I found a spot. Meet me outside right now." "Right now? Are you sure we're allowed to?" "Yeah, it's fine. Just go out the back door." So I remember I ended up going out the back door, and me and her, we ended up meeting up at the front of the cabins. I looked at her and said, "What are we doing here?" "Bubba, here, just follow me." She ended up grabbing me by the wrist, and we ended up running into a cabin that they would only use for like special events. And basically, it was a giant area with like a pool table and like some couches, and it was like a separate cabin for us to play in. So me and her, we ended up going on the couch, and well, one thing led to another. We ended up doing the Devil's Tango right then and there, like right away. We didn't even like exchange any words. We just got straight onto it. And as me and her were doing the Devil's Tango, I ended up hearing some rocks being kicked outside, and I felt like someone was coming, but I was too much in the moment to stop. And well, one thing led to another. Let's just say we ended up hearing a door open to the doors of the cabin, and that's when one of the sisters, by the way, yeah, like I'm talking about like a full-on nun, basically walked into the cabin and saw me and her doing the Devil's Tango. And what she said was so funny, because she says, "Oh, Lord, have mercy. What are you guys doing in here? Are you serious right now? The Lord would be ashamed. Doing it before marriage is wrong." And at that point, like me and her, we ended up putting our clothes on as fast as possible as she was watching us doing it. And she ends up sitting down with us, and we thought she was gonna like, you know, basically yell at us. But what she ended up doing was she ended up sitting down beside both of us as we were sitting down getting lectured. And well, she ended up whipping out the Bible and started reading out verses that we needed to hear, apparently, about basically how doing the devil's tango before marriage is a sin. Out of all the ways to be punished, this was little next to nothing. But hey, let's just all agree to not do what I do and just fall for more embarrassing stories just like this one. Peace out, guys.